Yeah, hi, I'm Chuck. I'm Chuck Whelon. Thank you for having me here. I'm an illustrator, artist for Goodman Games. I've been drawing things for Goodman Games since like the early 2000s. And today I'm doing a map. This one's just come back approved to finish. It doesn't have too many spoilers because it's a sort of overview map of the village. Well, not a village actually. Well, we'll see. But well, I won't give you a little too much of the backstory at this point. But the players have arrived at a wall. There's a little gatehouse here that I'm drawing in the wall. And move a little bit. So, I prepared this drawing and sent in a sketch. It's a little more of a prepared drawing. And then here, we've got quite a heavy iron gate. We had a little more texture of the bricks later on, but and then this gate is in a wall of this compound, which the players have learned is some sort of a monastery. And the wall, so to get an idea of the scale, the wall is about 15 feet high here. And if the players try and climb it, they'll find quickly that there's sort of jagged bits of broken glass embedded in the top here. So I don't think these are things up. This is stuff that the good writers at Goodman Games come up with.
Do you ever sometimes just like draw maps on your own just for funsies?
Oh yes, yes. I mean, I'm a gamer. I like to play games, role-playing games. I have done since like the early days when I was a kid at school in the 1970s, late 1970s. And I got into it then, and yeah, so I've always, but I like to draw. I'm an artist, so I've always enjoyed doing maps. So this is my heavy pen, so I'm gonna switch a little bit between this sort of lighter pen here. Well, and then this is the bit that takes quite a long time. So, and I'll later when I'm done with the inking with these maps. Well, lately, I mean, it depends. You can do it all black and white. I don't know if you have a preference. Do people prefer it if it's just sort of monochrome black and white with like lots of kind of textural effects, like something like Stefan Poag might do. That's sort of one way to do it. And then another way is to like add a wash or some grayscale and some texture, which I've been doing that lately, but I'm sort of still trying. I always like to try different things. Almost every map I sort of take a different approach to it, depending on what it is and what's being required. All right, there's some grass and there's a grid. So yeah, all right, let me draw the little scale in over here. Can you see that too? Yeah, I got into doing the maps more recently. I mean, I've always liked doing that. How did I get into it? I guess it was through art director Matt Hildebrand, The first ones I did were on like Dying Earth. I did some manses. So I guess they were quite sort of illustrated. They were more like a sort of almost a drawing to a map, but I really discovered that I love doing them. I've done quite a lot of work over the years. I've done sort of puzzle books and things with maps and mazes and whatnot. And yeah, so I love to do that. I don't know. This is just the way I came up with for doing the legend on the maps. So there's different approaches to maps. I mean, as a referee, I like a sort of nice clear map where I can see what's going on. So, well, all right. Well, I'm gonna do the sort of out. Well, how far am I gonna go? Well, I'm gonna do this. Yeah, you can ask me some questions while I do this. This bit won't be very exciting. Just a wall going up here, but I'll speed it up a bit.
What gave you the idea to do your like legend as like almost like building blocks over there in the corner?
Oh yeah. Oh wait, I just missed it. Well, just because of sort of simplifying it, but also it gives a tone of 3D-ness. So a little while ago, I was doing some maps with Brendan on a live stream for Goodman, Brendan LaSalle. We were sort of showing off some isometric paper that you could get if you signed up for the road crew award there. And so I was trying that out. And well, so isometric is a very sort of fixed way of doing it. This is isometric. This is following isometric, which means there's no sort of perspective particularly. But sometimes on a map, I might want to do perspective, or you sort of cheat it. It sort of depends. And Doug, he's very, he thinks the map should be very artistic. So he thinks it should be, not worrying too much about the grid or anything at all. So I think you need to have, like, for play, I like to have a good sort of sense of actually what the scale is. But, also you want to sort of communicate, what you're describing to the players, and just want to have one look. I mean, when I'm refereeing, I'm endlessly got a sort of big pile of papers because I like to be all quite old school. So, I want the map to just sort of convey it quite quickly, because sometimes you need that information and sometimes you don't. I mean, for this one, actually, like, the author supplied like a little map he'd made on some map software, and I was like, okay, that's I think that sort of is all you really need. But but then there's a lot more. Then you sort of can communicate some stuff about the tone, and yeah, and then the author did give me a map like all gridded out. So I went from the sort of gridded out overview map and looked at that. So I don't know what do people think. Answers on a postcard, please.
I think as far as like maps go, if I'm for like an overview map of like a town or even like a cave structure, I love the isometric because it kind of gives that sense of depth and the sense that it's I don't know, like a basic overtop grid is somewhat boring, but it makes sense for like an open field, right? Everything's plain, roughly the distance based on the size of the squares. But for like towns and stuff, I don't necessarily want the grid. It's like I don't like D&D books because I open up and I look at the map and I'm like, oh, this town is square and there's square houses. And it's like, I
yeah.
want to see the personality of the town. Like, I love the isometric maps that you and even Stefan have done in the DCC books, you know, because they add a character to each of the places in the world.
Yes. Well, yes. So that's sort of part of it. You want to add a bit of character, but I do sort of love those sort of old square tads, and I love those. Yeah, the Mike Schley maps that you know, in the modern D&D or the 5th edition. You know, I love all those. You know, those are great. Yeah.
Yeah, Ghosty Squid even says I like the isometric maps because it gives because of the scale perspective.
Yeah. Yes, and you know, then I can have some fun with the washes at the end to sort of get a bit of sort of tone and depth into it. I'm still working. Yeah, I'm always experimenting. Actually, I don't know. You know, I'm never satisfied.
Well, that's a good sign, though. You know, your stuff's never going to be boring if you keep experimenting with it, right?
Yeah, you know, and I think every map. There's one I did for Dying Earth again. That's the planet of Jank. I always talk about this one, but Jank, you get, you know, it's like a little side quest. You can get sent off to this whole other planet, you know, which is something that Jack Vance sort of wrote about, you know, and that, you know, so, you know, there's all these descriptions for this different area on the planet. So I was like, okay, well, it's sort of like a hex, but I wanted to show that it's like a small planet. So I did the curve, and I sort of curved the hexes, and, you know, sort of did it all like a little more, you know, then you could be like a lot more creative, because, you know, with the game, yeah, like you say, it doesn't have to be on the grid. It can be on the grid. It just depends. Okay, the grid and the vortex. There you go. That's an idea I had recently, because, you know, we sort of like, the vortex is like the Wizard of Oz, like we all sort of spin in the vortex, like in Dorothy's house, you know, everything's sort of really moving around, whatever. But then the grid, we impose the grid upon the vortex, and the vortex sort of powers the grid, but the vortex destroys the grid as it does so. Does that make sense?
Oddly enough, yes.
Yes, anyway, I think that's there's something about with these games with, you know, the maps and the grid. It sort of grids it out, and then there's the imagination and the fantasy is the other aspects, but somehow the two meet. All right, this is a difficult thing to draw. A tree that's been uprooted. You sort of have no reference for a tree. I mean, you know, you can look it up, but it's sort of a mess, and it's like indistinct. It's lost its beautiful form that a tree actually has. All these trees probably didn't too many leaves on. All right, well, you know, and it's taken on this sort of higgledy-piggledy state. It's always like a scribble. And I mean, you know. That's the vortex, you know. There's the sort of neat line where you're sort of always staying in. And then another time I want to do it, like, oh, I'm just losing it. You know, but then the sort of texture and the tone, and that's the sort of looseness. So yeah, so I'll get that bit in there now before I get too obsessed with neatness. Otherwise, you know, I don't know, if I got that obsessed with neatness, you know, then it would take a week.
It's a fine line to balance crazy and perfection, right?
Yeah, and then, like, you know, that beauty has imperfection. You know, beauty is like a temporal, intransigent thing. You know, it's like sort of beautiful because it's not permanent, but also, you know, it has an element of unevenness. You know, that's the tricky bit. This is where your sort of artistic sense comes in. Mm-hmm. You know, like how do you spread things out? You know, if you spread things out on the grid, ... it looks very manufactured and man-made. Or, you know, if you use a ruler, you know, which I don't really tend to do a lot. But actually, you know, it's kind of good to do that, because, you know, then you get the contrast between, again, the grid and the vortex, the straight and the wibbly wobbly. But the wibbly wobbly is sort of what comes from your hand anyway. I don't know. But then that's sort of like, well, we like this sort of hand drawn look here. But again, it will depend on the map. But this one, yeah, I mean, you know, for as long as I've been drawing, I think I've been drawing like little houses and little thatched houses. Now, I grew up in the part of the world where you would see thatched houses around, fairly common sights in southern England. It's pretty, well, actually, I'm going to change that because I was thinking of like a little English house. These have all little sort of like leaded windows, you know. I mean, really, I don't know. When glass doesn't come along till kind of later, like in Venice, you know, they have all these sort of glass windows. Like that's where they were, you know, got really into their glass there. And they had like the leaded windows. You know, they couldn't do a big pane of glass. They could do like the little leading. But you know, this is Dungeon Crawl Classics world, so really, whatever. Magic. So there's some sort of building that you can see here. Ooh, now I'm going to refer back. So I also print out like, okay, here's where. Just so I can just see what I did. Okay, so I did put a window in it. I can't really see it. All right. Yeah, if you don't ask me questions, I'll start muttering to myself.
It's okay. We kind of expect it.
Okay. Is that what normally happens?
Oh yeah, 100%. But I guess the one question that always ends up coming up, and I'll go ahead and ask it before chat does, is what kind of pens do you typically use? I know each artist has like a different set of tools per se that they like to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this pen that I'm using is called the Pitt Artist Pen from Faber-Castell. Black India ink, waterproof, high light fastness. So that's why I use it for its archival quality, and because I can do a wash over it. Now, it's a lot more fun to draw with a Sharpie, and you know, if I'm just going to scan it, then a Sharpie's good. And I like to do just sort of Sharpie drawings for fun. And I do some different things. Like I might do some warm-up drawings or whatever with the Sharpies. But they're pretty permanent. I don't know, but they don't really, like, you can't really sort of watercolor them. So that's the problem with them. I'm just thinking about thatched roofs again. I remember thatched roofs. I remember from my childhood. But you know, I'll look up reference. Like I look up reference when I'm doing the drawing. When I'm inking, I tend to just see what looks good.
Are there certain things that you tend to not use reference? Like, is there anything that's like kind of committed to your memory that you've either referenced so much in the past, or you just kind of know it, or do you tend to, just in case, I'm going to pull up a reference for this anyway?
I would advise that it's always a good idea to look at some reference, because you'll get a little quirk of something that you didn't think of. You know, and each time you sort of draw the same thing, you might notice something else about it. You know, like a lot of artists, they'll just sort of draw like the human body and figure, you know, and, you know, it's endlessly fascinating. And, you know, you should look at the body and, you know, just do that, you know, think about that, the landscape of that. You know, I mean, but both is good, but then I'll do things that are completely from my imagination as well. So, you know, and then that's a more of a sort of feeling-y thing. I think usually For stuff for Goodman games, I do use a reference because I feel like that's what people like. But then you could, yeah, I could definitely go more like someone like Errol Otis, who, he's more in the like just doing what it feels like. Or my good friend James West, who sometimes does that, and that's very good too. And I do some of my personal stuff, but then I tend to get more humorous when I go that way. I tend to be doing more of a sort of humorous cartoon or something. I just got some book. I've just got a book out, right now, like Earth Space Heroes. So like Earth Space is my comic. And that's sort of blending the two a little bit. It's all sort of superheroes and just funny little drawings that I was coming up with. I seem to have a lot of time on my hands over the last few years, so for some reason. Some reason I was sitting around a lot with time to draw for a change, so I did some drawing. So no, yes, because yes, so different times doing different projects, I guess.
Mm-hmm. We do have a question from Ghosty Squid in the chat. Have you ever had to participate in rethatching or repairing a thatched roof?
No, I don't think I would be able to do that. It certainly wouldn't be a good idea for me now to go up on a roof. It's like a specialized job, and there were thatchers around, and actually it's quite expensive to live in a thatched house because you do have to employ a thatcher to come in and rethatch your roof. Much as a piano has to be tuned or something on a fairly regular basis. And thatchers, there's not a lot of kids going into the thatching business. I'm sure if you went along and said, I want to be a thatcher, they'd be like, oh, they'd be happy at first, but then they'd be like, oh, do they really want to be a thatcher? Was it just another artist coming along to really try and understand thatch roofs?
Yeah.
I know these trees probably should have lost some more of their leaves, but all right. Looks like there's been some sort of a storm. And I'm probably going to add some. When I do the wash, I'll get a sort of good muddy sort of feel. I'll just stick in a little puddle there for now.
Peter Mullen has joined in the chat. Hello, Peter.
Oh, hi, Peter.
He's exclaiming over your red pencil.
Oh, now what's he got to say about so red pencil is my thing that I discovered where you can really drop it out on the scan if you're going to go in black and white. You go into channels on your RGB scan, and in Photoshop you select the red one, and then you just basically get a very clean grayscale, and the red just disappears. Much in the old days they used to use blue, like non-photo blue, but I've always found that digitally it always left a little grey shadow, and maybe when things were being photographed, the blue did work better. But even with blue, they sort of switched to green, right, for green screen. I mean, these are all the same things in a way, but I've just found that red, as far as scanners and things, so if you scan it, do the red, it disappears very clean. I sort of discovered it by accident when I was using I couldn't find a blue pencil, so I used a red one. I don't know. I was just trying different things, actually. Yeah. So that's that. Now, there's also a grid on here. I'm wondering, I'm going to probably do the grid because I've got it already set up in Photoshop. So I probably will add the grid in Photoshop because I don't want it to be too strong. So it will just be quite light. All right. Anyway. All right. And you can see the wall. Okay. And also from this sort of vantage point of looking in, you also become aware of like a large looks like some sort of a tower, but it's a very black tower. So I have to think about that, whether I'm going to draw it all black now, because in the description it says it's absorbing all the light so that you really wouldn't sort of see anything, but it is made of sort of brick, and there's a sort of texture to it. So how much I'm doing that in the inking now, I don't know. So I'm gonna. So I think I'm going to define it more when I sort of get my brush out later. But I'm just, for the story, I'm just putting it there. All right. And then this wall continues up here.
Peter says he just uses graphite like the Neanderthal he is.
Well, that's probably sensible. Actually, lately, when I've been doing I was doing more coloured watercolours, and then the red was a bit of a nuisance, and it was sort of smearing around. But the thing is that I do tend to scan my sketch and maybe manipulate it, and maybe even combine and do stuff in Photoshop, and then print it larger onto the paper to ink it. So I don't tend to anymore just like do a pencil sketch that I ink straight onto. But that's because I sold out and went the modern route. Whereas Peter's like laboring away on the farm, doing everything the proper way, I expect. Peter is got amazing. I've been looking at his work over the years, and he's. I don't know, Peter. Do you have a lot of patience? I don't know if I have his patience for like all this. I think I'm always looking for shortcuts. I'm too much of a cartoonist. Like in comics, I spent too long on comics. Like comics, you have Wally Wood, and he was like, don't draw it if you can copy it. Don't copy it if you can trace it. Don't trace it if you can cut it out and paste it up. So, and that way you get prolific. But I don't know. Peter seems pretty prolific anyway, so I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. I do sort of like doing the maps, though. Here I am. I like to sort of go wandering around the place. So here they are, and again, I'll add more depth. Maybe I'll go in. I'll do the wash now. Actually, I think I'm going to do it as I go along, just so that I'll do this area one at a time. That way, we'll see how far into the adventure we get.
Aw, Peter says he's not as prolific as you.
Well, there's something to be said about quality over quantity there, but yeah.
I think if I were to be an artist, I think maps would probably be my favorite thing to draw, because it's kind of like you get to step into another place and kind of create it. It's like you're building the world, even though someone else has written it. So you draw it based on how it's written. You're the one that's like making it come to life.
But you can also sort of do a map in a very like improvisational way, where you just sort of make it up as you go along. So it's quite a good way to get into drawing. I mean, this is one of the things about like role-playing games and stuff, is that they're quite they're a creative hobby, in that you can let someone else do the creativity for like Goodman games, and they'll get the best people who are really passionate about it. But you can also if you want to do it yourself, you can just get in there and do it to whatever level that you like to do it at. And we're all aspiring to be better. We can all look at each other and go, wow, look at what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a dinky, I've got grid paper, and I made a dinky little island for the adventure that I'm trying to write.
Oh, okay.
And I look at everybody else's maps, and I'll like thumb through adventures and be like, okay, so how do people draw maps? How do people draw an island? And then I go, oh, my island's weird looking.
Yeah, but today's weird looking, tomorrow's cool, so we just don't know.
Very true. I find
I
that
don't know.
I
You
have
just
trouble with depth. Like getting the correct perspective and the right depth is where I tend to falter in my creation whenever I try to draw.
Hmm.
Like isometric maps, I don't know if I could do that. Like I look at this and I'm like, I see the fundamental shapes, but I'm not sure I can do it.
Well, using sort of isometric paper is one way, I mean, and cheating a bit in Photoshop, I mean that. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's cheating, whatever. Like you use the tools and the techniques to get the results that you want, but I'll sort of take the map. I'll take the author's map that they sent me, whatever little scribble, and I'll put it in Photoshop. I'll distort it like the way. Okay, this is how I sort of want it to go on the page, but this way, distorting it like still by keeping the grid that was sort of built into it, and build this black up a bit as I go. But yeah, think about this while I'm doing it.
No worries.
I'll probably, I'm going to build this black up a bit so that some of these whites, it won't be like, I don't want it to be that shiny. It's very complicated, and I might end up having to go and, I know already I might have to go and sort of rescue it a bit if I don't get it right. But usually you don't know. You don't really know till you're done. You sort of finish building it up, and you can add some white and stuff like that, and hopefully you end up more or less where you're going.
So is this just like a basic ink that's been watered down, or?
This is actually, yes, very basic. Pelican watercolor set. I mean, obviously this I'm only using the black, but I like you can rearrange it, so I rearrange them myself so I can use them like that. But I like them. They're very nice and bright, and they're very sort of reworkable. Like they're not, you can mix them after they've dried, but they hold up. Yeah, they're very handy, and so that this will be more sort of shadow over here. There's lots of little things you can do. You sort of come in with some white at the end and pick bits out. So you don't worry too much about making mistakes. Yeah, like those sort of weird, quirky things that you're like, oh, well, why do I do that? I don't know. Then after a while, you're like, well, that's just the way that I do it. And you explore it, and you think, oh, so and so, and you look at so and so, and like, oh, I wish I could do it like them. And you can copy them, and if you like it, but or you don't. I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't really copy other people much. I mean, I have done, but like actually, and I don't. It's sort of like in a way, people you don't even want to do it. I mean, you just want to do your own thing anyway. So you look at reference, take inspiration, and then do what you think is right, I guess.
Was there anyone in particular that, like, when you were starting out doing art or whatever, that really inspired you, that was kind of your, in a sense, of your muse or whatever, that was like, oh man, like that's the level I want to achieve?
So many people. I mean, in games, I remember looking at Errol Otis on the back of White Plume Mountain. Like there's just adventures, quite a simpler one. They're sort of like pointing across the plain at the White Plume Mountain, and you can see the smoke coming out. And I hadn't even really read it or looked at it, but it wasn't my copy. I was borrowed it off someone, I think, and I was just sort of really looked at that illustration on the back more than anything, because it was like so simple, but I loved how it sort of transported you away to this sort of magical place very effectively. So that really. That was big for me in terms of game art, but I liked, probably not around that time, this is sort of in the middle of my teenage years, I suppose, or early teenage years. Like I came across sort of like the underground cartoonists. I really like sort of Gilbert Shelton a lot, who did like the Freak Brothers, which is having a bit of a, they got an animated series of it out now, which is nice to see finally. But yeah, I like that a lot, and somewhat Robert Crumb. There was the famous documentary about Robert Crumb. He's a bit more disturbing, but he's got his own documentary that came out a few years before that, which you can find on YouTube. It was on like Panorama, like a British TV arts program, which was really cool. And I really liked him a lot. He was, I like what he put forward in that. And, I don't know. It's, I would read Asterix and Tintin books a lot. They're quite popular in England as a kid. And then Judge Dredd, I liked a lot, but I never quite draw in that Judge Dredd style. So yeah, I'm always a little more humorous, And then for Goodman, I've done more sort of humorous things, I suppose, a lot of time. I sort of, it sort of varies a bit. Yeah, I tend to do each sort of job as it comes along, really. But yeah, when my son was young, I sort of focused more on sort of children's book illustration and stuff like that for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to say, I received a copy of How to Write Adventures That Don't Suck, and you did the illustrations inside of that. And honestly, I've read some of the bits that are in it, but I thumbed through it when I first got the book. I thumbed through it and just kept looking at all of your little cartoons that were in there because they're so funny.
Oh yeah, that was that was a really fun job. And I was so happy to get to do that. Those articles were like so, they were so great. It's such a good book. I read through all the articles before I illustrated any of them, and they were all very meaningful and actually really helpful, I thought, as as a referee, or if you want to write a game at all, which I haven't really. When I was young, I think I tried. I'd write games for my players, but I'm like, well, there's only so much time. I've always been more interested in the art aspect. So, that's where I sort of focus my time, I suppose. But yeah, they were all great articles. So I love thinking up the stuff, and, yes, at some point, yeah, when I was first doing stuff for Goodman, I did some sort of covers for the original Dungeon Crawl Classics run. But then I was like, well, yeah, but as I was doing more sort of children's book illustration, and then I sort of got more into doing cartoons. So I said, I just want to do cartoons for Goodman now. So then I was just doing that for a while. But then I don't know. Then Matt Hildebrand got me more. He sort of enticed me back into doing other things. Yes, it was Dying Earth, I think. Like Dying Earth came along, and then I really loved doing that. Because I love that book and those stories and everything. So that was really exciting to work on that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the art in Dying Earth is absolutely amazing. Like, between what you've done and what everyone else did in there, I think I haven't finished reading it because every time I go through it, I'm like, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna read through this adventure so I could run my players through it. I'm just like staring at art.
I could say that distracted. Yeah, I mean, I went back through. The other day I was sort of sorting out my books and stuff like that, and I was looking back over some of the things like the Dungeon Alphabet and what's the other one? The Monsters Alphabet. Yeah, sorry. And I was just looking at them in terms of like being art books. And I was like, oh my god, these are just amazing art books. And the bonus, you've got the tables in there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I would recommend anybody that hasn't really checked those out to definitely check those out.
Yeah, Peter was saying that the Monster Alphabet cartoons are fantastic, and that your surprise cartoon in the DCC rulebook is one of his all-time favorites.
Oh wow! Oh my god! Peter, thank you so much, Peter. I never know if anyone really get that one. Yes. Well, that was good because I didn't like when I was doing the ones for the rule book. I didn't 100% know what all the rules were going to be for Dungeon Crawl Classics. But Joseph said he said just give me a sort of selection of like old school tropes and stuff like that, and all these things that struck you about like gaming and stuff like that. So I did quite a sort of spectrum of things, and then as it evolved more, I sort of worked out and did things that were like more specific to this rule or that rule or whatever. And he wrote a few of them himself. Actually, he said, there's a couple of if you look at the signatures, like I put his signature on the one as well that he wrote. So yeah, sorry, what was the question?
Oh yeah,
the surprise one. Yeah,
the surprise one.
Well, yeah. So surprise was a rule that I never really understood when I was young and played D&D. I don't know, but I sort of like, obviously it's quite important. It's one of those things that changes, just a sort of funny rule. But then it was also like, okay, what are players doing? And then also like, okay, the poor goblins are having, they're just having a nice time. It's just that attitude as players. Part of these games is sort of allowing yourself to, play this sort of deranged person that would jump out of a cake.
Yeah, right.
Somebody's party. I mean, it's the sort of, I don't know what it is. Yes, we like, you want to explore these sort of characters and behaviors. And I mean, it's still, still in modern video games, it's the same, like you could say about like Grand Theft Auto or something, but, correlated with the rise of things like Grand Theft Auto, there's sort of generally a decline in actually most of these behaviors because, people get to sort of experience it in a format and act out, and you sort of learn that it's usually the results aren't that good.
Yeah. I'm gonna steal this sedan. Oh dear, there's 3 cops on me. Oh, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Wasted just goes across the screen. Maybe that wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
I do have a question from someone in the chat, though. Odd One Man asks, how long until you get to this stage of inking? Like, about how many drafts or versions of a drawing do you get to?
Not many. Again, so I have to spend a bit of time reading what the author wrote. And then I have to look at like what sort of maps that they gave me. In this case, he actually did me some pretty good maps. And, then I'll sort of play around with those. Usually with the map, first thing I do is sort of really play around with it in the computer and sort of do a rough layout of like, this is how much space I need it to fill up. These are the sort of technical requirements that I need it to fulfill. So that, and then, and this I just went over, so, I went and drew it. So let's say that's like a day and a half of work if I'm sort of taking it fairly slowly. I mean, it's got to scan it in at the end, spend some time on the email. But, basically you end up, so that, and then I've just started what you've seen me do. Then I took what I did, and, screened it back, printed it out in light red onto this watercolor paper, which is the largest watercolor paper that I can fit through my printer. Which is it's the printer, it gets upset. The paper is 13 by 17, and the printer gets a bit upset if I tell it 13 by 17. But if I tell it it's 12.5 by 17. Or is it a bit longer than 17? I might be longer. I don't know. Anyway, if I tell it's 12.5, then it doesn't mind, and it will run the 13 paper through, and it just won't print on that last edge. But otherwise, yeah, it goes a bit mental if I tell it's actually 13. And anyway, yes. So there you go, and then I can like ink it and. If I was doing a sort of full-on watercolor, like if I'm doing a cover, which maybe I do have a cover for X-Crawl. I don't know when we're doing this again. In 2 weeks, did you say? I might have my cover for X-Crawl. I might do that. I don't know. I'll see that. But then that's a lot more. Like then that's a full cover that I'm. So to do a cover is almost like a week's worth of work, really. Yeah, that's a good week. a good week sort of spread out over 2 weeks usually. I sort of do the sketches 1 week, sort of got to be approved. I've got to get caught up on other things, and then do the colouring the following week. But I don't know. You can spend a lot of time on a painting. Some artists will spend months on a painting. And hopefully, you can sell it for that much more afterwards because it'll look that much more amazing. I don't know. I don't think I'm ADD because I sit here and do it, but I'm a little bit that I'm it's sometimes I'll do very sort of quick drawings for my own amusement. If you follow me on my @EarthSpace on Instagram, you'll see some of the other things I do. I have some different Instagram. I have Dice Troller where I put all my Goodman games and RPG stuff, and then EarthSpace is that's where I'm sort of doing my current little cartoons. But they're very loose and just a quick idea. But I did all these search and finds as well, at one point, big Where's Waldo sort of sense. So that was a bit of kind of both. That was a map filled with all these cartoon characters, which, I did that for a bit. I don't really want to do anymore. I occasionally get asked, but I usually ask, I want a really good deal if I'm going to do any more of those. I do want to do a Where's the Wizard one. Oh, I'll do that one. That would be good. They have that. There is that Hasbro one. Behold, it was advertise other products. So this will be a better version of that. But I do like the guy who does that, Ulysses Farina. He's great. Actually, I love his work though. So that's a really good book. Yeah, I've been following him for a while. It's funny. I followed him because of different things he was doing, and I didn't know that he was doing searches. And yeah, well. So many great people doing so many good things. All right, so we'll let that settle in a bit. I sort of will come back at the end and adjust it. I'll probably make some of the darks a little darker. And the shadows to sort of bring back the depth a bit more. I also have this path kind of fairly clearly marked out. All right, so we can move on to the next little area. All right. Any questions?
Not as of right now. Ghosty Squid did comment on your printer. It sounds like an Epson.
Actually, it's a Canon, and it's much better than my Epsons. I've had Epsons in the past, and I always found them very problematic. Actually, generally, my Canon, it's a Canon Pixma, IX680. And it's actually the second one that I bought. But that's better than it sounds because it really did work very well. And the reason it broke was more because I dropped it than anything. So yeah, it works really well. I use off-market ink in it, and it works very fine with off-market ink. When I felt like my Epson printers tended to get a little bit unhappy about the off-market ink over time, and I don't know. Yeah, my Epson printers never really worked as well. This one generally it works pretty well, and I'm trying to get it to print on 13 by 17. That's bigger than it's supposed to do. So the fact that they can trick it into doing even more than it's supposed to is a good thing. It's supposed to do up to A3, but okay, yeah. I'm a bit of a metric guy, I'm afraid. I first in England when I was growing up, we had to learn imperial, but I never got the hang of it. I hated it, and then they said, "Oh, we're going to metric." I'm like, "Oh, this is much easier. Just count to 10." Yeah, all right. I'm not a super math guy, but I was quite a fan of the metric system. It seemed way better than the imperial system. Then I come over here and they're like, "Oh no, we're still on the imperial system. We tried that metric crap. It didn't work."
As an American, I hate to say I don't know what I'm doing whenever I look at the metric system. It's like I understand that it's much easier and it's technically better, but I've grown up on imperial and I'm just like, yeah. I don't know what to do with meters. What is a meter?
Yeah, no, well, as I've lived here, I mean, I've lived here longer now, and I'm quite. I guess I'm more fond of the imperial. Again, it's something about it's the analog way. It's not the digital way.
Yeah. And it's really funny for me because I laugh about it with a bunch of my friends is Americans will give the size of anything in really weird measurements, like a bunch of washing machines can fit a football field, or
Oh yes,
yeah,
yes. They like
like,
measuring things in terms of football fields. Yeah,
yeah,
which is
like
good.
why do we do this? I don't know, but we all understand it. We understand the
Yeah.
size of a football field.
Well, that makes more sense, I suppose. But it's a bit confusing to everybody else who's not exactly sure how big.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess yeah. And then estimation. I mean, as an artist, you're supposed to be good, I suppose, at estimating. I remember sort of doing stuff like that in the scouts or whatever, where you'd sort of, or math class, you'd have to estimate how tall that tree is across the field or something.
Yeah, that's where I just get messed up with it. I am so terrible at that kind of stuff. I'm just like, I think a tree's this big, but it might not be. It's the same reason, like, anytime I've tried to draw a person, I have to do, like, hands and feet cannot be bare. I can't, they either come out way too small or, like, giant Mickey Mouse hands.
Well, hands are difficult. I don't want to say about hands. Just keep working at them. I think at some point they start to make a bit more sense. All right, there's one way to do it. All right, let's do this very quickly. And it's square, and then again, there's this line that goes up from the arm and goes through the middle finger. All right, and even I've got to look at my hands, and then that. So, and then your thumb is sort of down here. The details. All right, but actually, if you sort of put these in, and then you sort of draw around that, it's a bit like, and the more you exaggerate it, the more it looks like a crony sort of hand. But if you just do it a little bit, then it's a more of a a feminine sort of hand, like a masculine hand, just sort of depending on how you sort of do that, anything from the sort of, because then you're sort of getting the bones. And if you think about finger bones, they do. So it really just that sort of circle gets you a lot closer right away. And just thinking about that construction. And then sort of realizing that the palm is a sort of, generally, I mean, there's different, you can conceive it's not actually, it's more of a weird, and, if you look at it that way, then suddenly, there's this sort of triangular aspect there. All right. Does that help?
Yes, and you can't see me, like no one can see me, but my mouth dropped as you were doing that because I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense, and I never thought about it that way. I've seen all of those like how-tos and tutorials and stuff, and none of them explain a hand that easily.
Well, I saw Jim Lee do that on stage one time or something similar, and he was so good at it, so I don't know, it's stuck in my head a bit. So he did it even better.
Yeah.
And then he added some pearls, so it was like some scattered pearls, and then you suddenly realized it was Batman's mother's hand. That was really, yeah.
No.
Yeah, it was like, oh no, I was like, oh wow, that was really good.
Now we all just feel bad.
yeah. I know. Yeah, it's a sort of moment where you're like, wow, you're good and bad.
Yeah.
I can't believe that worked. It's so funny and tragic. Yes. Oh my god. And the other guy I saw who was doing was the Korean artist who just passed away. Who would just go straight in and draw in ink. Oh, I'm terrible. I forgot his name. Somebody will remember. he just would go straight in ink and do a really elaborate sort of superheroes riding a motorcycle sort of thing, very realistic. Oh my god, well, somebody help me out here. But so that's a way to do it as well, just sort of going straight in ink. And I've tried to do that as practice a bit sometimes.
Where you don't sketch at all, you just straight do it in pen?
Yes, that's more like art, and it's easier, if you're working sort of directly from a reference or something. But even just sort of drawing from a model. I mean, then the more you're trying to make it up as you go, sort of the harder it is. But then you'll get some things. But for a job, I wouldn't probably do that because there are some artists that are quite, certainly when you're getting into cartoonists, they like that. Are you familiar with Quentin Blake? He's the guy that illustrated a lot of Roald Dahl books. Quite loose sort of style.
I never knew his name, but yeah.
Yeah. He was a big proponent of, you just go straight in ink or you'll lose. You'll lose all the sort of life and character.
That makes a lot of sense looking at his style of art,
Yeah, well, yeah, it's easier if you're doing something like that. Or do you know Mr. Doodle? He's a bit like Keith Haring. He's got a whole house that he's doodled.
Oh, yeah.
He just does sort of a black or white kind of random pattern. He just sort of goes in and does it, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, all right. It's the way to go. I mean, if that appeals, you should do it. I've never really tried it like that. A little bit with the search and finds, I was sort of getting a little bit, but then I'm trying to say, I'm trying to do something more specific.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my Earth-based cartoons, then I'm just sort of making up, and they are a little more random. All right. So this area seems to be little cell-like huts. And then as the players enter here, then there's like a big bong and the bell goes off here, casting like some doom-laden effect on everything. So, then they have to decide, are they going to spend their time searching through all these little huts, or what are they going to do?
It kind of reminds me of if you've ever played Resident Evil 4.
Well, I can't say I have, to be honest.
Okay.
I wish I had more time for video games. There are so many games I would love to play, but at some point I decided I'm going to draw. And
No, that's fair. I probably would be finished with my D&D adventure if I didn't take the time to play video games.
Yeah.
On a somewhat regular schedule with my friends.
Yes, it's like, do I really want to waste my life not playing video games?
Yeah, like it's one of those weird things. It's like it makes me there's a stigma around people who play too much video games, but like I got into streaming and doing a lot of my broadcast stuff because I fell in love with esports. But it's one of those things that it's like video games are like the one time that, because most of my friends are online, like the ones that I'm close to that do come to my house, two of the three live in opposite directions of me on an hour and a half away. So it's not like it's an easy trip, but it's a weekend thing. They come over, they stay at my house, and then they leave the next day, It's,
nice.
We stay up all night playing board games, but we play video games because we don't get to see each other that often.
Yeah.
And then I've got
yes,
friends
exactly.
on the other side of the freaking globe, so it makes it even harder. But it's one of those things that it's like I realize that video games are my social hour. That's how I get my socializing in outside of work.
Well, just remember that before it was bad for you to play video games, it was bad for you to play role-playing games. So,
True. True. Yay, satanic panic.
Yeah.
Now it's cool to play role-playing games.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is
Well,
awesome.
Yes, the cartoonists were quite familiar. There's that like famous Chick tract. Do you know what that is? The Chick tract. He was a guy. He leaves little religious comics around.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
and there's the famous Satanic Panic one that he did of people playing D&D, and the character died or something, and they're like, well, now you now
Yeah.
you're cursed.
And the funny thing is Joey Royale, the host of our next show coming up tonight, he actually created those like little pamphlets that called Darkest Dice that are a take on that, but they're quick start books for DCC.
Oh wow, yes, okay, well, that sounds great. Yeah.
I left some of them in my college. I had them.
Leave them around, yeah.
Yeah, I had them in my purse, and I had forgotten because I was like taking them to show a friend, and I'd forgotten to take them out of my purse or my backpack or something, and I'm just like, hey, I got a couple of these, so I just started throwing them around the school.
That's good. Well, yes, I don't know, like if Jack Chick sort of would go around leaving his own comics around, or if he had sort of, I feel like, he sends them out to people. You could order them from the website, and so, I think people take it on themselves to distribute them. But, good on him. He's trying to alert us to the evils of the world. Just kind of going about it in kind of a strange way.
I can't blame him, but
okay, but have you actually tried playing it?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like you guys are just judging it off of a few words. You guys are crazy. It's like an adult, it's almost like an adult version or a grown-up kid version of when you used to play pretend, It's like kids playing cops and robbers or just role-playing.
Yeah. Yes. There was a very popular series of books. I don't think you can get them here. Like they were called like Just William in England, and they're very funny, and they're about a kid, and he's quite a rebel. They're written by a woman, Richmond Crompton, and they're really hilarious. They're very, very funny books, and just like the adults are all very well-meaning and earnest, and the kids are just real troublesome. And William in particular, and he lives in a world of the imagination, really, and they're continually playing all these games. You might have to, just cops and robbers, whatever, or whatever, all these sort of amazing imagination sort of stuff, which I guess is what kids would do a lot. So, it's just, it's sort of natural. Those books, and they go back to sort of like, I think the early ones are like in the 20s and stuff. And then I think she kept doing them right through to at least the 60s. But they're still very funny. But I don't know if they're. I don't know if the content is. I don't really think the content was that bad. But all right, there's probably some bits in there that wouldn't stand up today. So it's very interesting what travels across the ponds and what doesn't. Like games, role-playing games, they definitely did. They're very popular.
Yeah, like, isn't the UK Expo coming up next week, I believe? So, which is really neat. Goodman Games, I believe, is having a booth there. And I was surprised. Like, apparently, there's quite a few people in the UK who absolutely love DCC, which I think is amazing.
That's amazing, and but I'm not surprised. Like the gaming's there. I mean, something like the Fiend Folio from TSR when that came out back in the day. That was largely, that was a TSR UK production.
Was it really? I didn't know that.
Yes, and the art. Oh my God, I'm forgetting all the artists' names. He just died. Russ Nicholson.
Yes, thank you. I forgot his last name.
Yes. He's very influential. Oh my God, I wasn't. Of course, I was very aware of his work, but of course, until just recently, I hadn't even really. Yeah, but I knew he was doing stuff from Goodman. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh well, I wish I'd had a chance to speak to him. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's phenomenal. That style. I mean, again, he's doing that very nice neat.
Very stark. It is what I kind of remember, like when I opened up looking at the Fiend Folio and looking at his art. But I feel like that was kind of just the style as well of TSR Productions, is like the art was very stark in contrast, like the blacks and the whites. But the
Yes, it was it was much harder to print halftones, or more expensive, in those days. Nowadays I don't think it's a problem at all, but back then I think there was more difficulty if it was halftones, so it was much easier if it was just clean black and white. But then there's something about that as well, so it's a different, there's something quite pleasing about it.
Yeah, I was lucky to get a copy of the Fiend Folio for Christmas last year, and that, oh my goodness, that is one of my favorite things to thumb through. I think that's my prized product on my shelf, is like that is the epitome of like I've made it, is the Fiend Folio, because I've been wanting one for years.
Well, okay, yes, that's a good one. Yes, I might not have a Fiend Folio, actually, to be honest. I don't know if I have one. I don't think I ever had one. Yeah, that is a good thing. But there's also, the Goodman Games Dungeon Denizens coming out. That's going to have 500 monsters. That's going to be another art feast.
I kickstarted that. I was like, I decided I backed that as soon as it was one of those things that I was teetering on it, because I was doing all the production for the streams and whatnot, as you do. And I was sitting there and I'm like, I don't need to spend more money. I've already, I backed Dying Earth, I spent money on that. I don't need another one. And then I kept hearing them talk about it. And then they kept talking about how all of them are going to have illustrations and all of you guys are going to have like big color pieces of these monsters. And I'm like, oh no, I need it now.
Yes, I did a few of them. I know Bradley's done tons of them.
Yeah, I feel like on his Facebook page, I see another monster for Dungeon Denizens pop up like every other day. It's crazy.
All right, well, so there's a little area there with the monks' little huts, and then it looks out into a larger courtyard here. And here in the middle, there's like just a low stone wall. It's probably even lower than that. There we go.
So when exactly did you kind of start drawing? Like, when did you... I guess more what I'm asking is, when did you realize that it's what you wanted to do?
I'm
sorry, I asked a hard
like
question.
drawing, it's like that's like asking when did you not stop drawing?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I wanted to do, yeah, I think at some point as a teenager, I sort of got the idea. I think probably when I was looking at the Judge Dredd of the Freak Brothers and comics and things, I had it a little bit like, and my dad liked to draw cartoons too, so I got it a little bit from him. And and my grandmother on my mother's side was an artist as well. So that was sort of in the family somewhat, and it's something I could do and that I like to do. But I also, at that age, I was like, that's a bit of a ridiculous thing to want to do. So it was a bit like I sort of worked my way up to lion taming fire accountancy. And I went to sort of business school. I didn't even go to art school because I was like, oh, even though I was like, oh, starving artist.
Yeah.
Now I'm sort of quite happy to be a starving artist. I don't know, but when I was younger, I was like, oh, didn't quite want to commit to it like that. I sort of did it because I wasn't even that I wanted to be an artist. It was like, oh, I want to be a cartoonist. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. So I don't know, but then then the more you do it, and the more you learn about sort of art, and start to think of it as art and doing that, and then those things fall away. But yeah, so I went and I studied at business school for a bit, and then I took art courses, and I always did art courses and art drawing, and I never really sort of stopped it. So it's just more just sort of doing it, all right? I mean, like being a musician or something, you've got to. And you get better at doing it slowly.
Yeah.
Again, talking about like someone like Jim Lee, just because he's so sort of well known and popular, he would say I treat it like an athlete. That I would go up and I'd go just like I'd see the athletes training on the training on the track every day, and you've got to be like that. You've got somewhat, if you want to be, if you want to be the best, the greatest, or whatever. I don't know. You don't have to be the greatest though, but but if you want to be the greatest, that sort of thing you've got to do.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of, okay, I'm doing that and not the other thing. Then that was at some point when I was like feeling like, oh, I want to be a bit more serious. I was sort of doing these other jobs. I was working in advertising, and that was a decent job, and it was fairly well paid. I was like, oh, but I really wanted to be drawing, so I had to sort of make the time. And then I sort of was like, oh well, I can't. I got to stop playing like video games and stuff like that at night, and I got to really focus on trying to draw and do that, and send my work and try and get work doing it. I mean, they're sort of doing. I did my own stuff. I was always like do like my web comic and all that, and but yeah, if you want to get rich, go into banking.
Yeah. Or engineering.
Or do something. Yeah, science. But science apparently rates very highly in terms of job satisfaction. Feeling like you're doing something worthwhile. Not having to work ridiculous hours, and getting paid fairly well. So. Mm-hmm. Science is what I recommend.
Yeah, science is what we recommend to you youngins if you want to make a good living and not feel like you're driving yourself insane. But if you want to feel satisfaction and creative, art is where it's at. But the crazy hours are just a given.
Yes, it's just crazy hours, like sort of doing it at night. I still like, even though. I don't have to. I still my juices tend to get going later in the day.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only person, because I swear, like, not that I don't do things in the morning, but I have to get all of my workhouse stuff done during the day and like when the sun is out. Any of my creative stuff that I want to do, like any hobbies that I have, or even sometimes like with Goodman work on days where I don't have shows, I'm typically editing videos at night because my brain is just more turned on. I don't know why, but it's so hard for me to focus in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't understand morning people. I know so many morning people in my life, and I'm like, how are you functioning before noon?
Yeah, and I used to feel more kind of guilt about that sort of thing. But then I saw this chart one time on the internet, the wonderful internet, it said like hours that famous creative people kept, and they were all over the map, so it didn't really matter, if you can keep whatever hours suit you. If you're if you're able to make a living that way, I suppose. Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah.
All right.
So we're, just to give you a little sense of time, Chuck, and in case you're not looking at the clock, it is about 7:15. It is up to you if you want to continue, or if you would like to pause here for the night.
I'm happy to keep going as long as you like, Alana. I'm enjoying myself. I've started. So pretty going to go on and finish it, and I might I'll probably keep my camera on and release it for someone to look at later if they're interested. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to keep going until I know you've got another show coming up, so
sure.
Yeah,
we'll keep on going until about the time I need to leave.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see how I get on in another 15 minutes or so. See if I can get this tower looking somewhat decent.
Yeah,
it's very difficult. It's very difficult. When anything that you draw is made up of light. The play of light and shadow. Even in a cartoon like this sort of line, it's there's a contact shadow. It's sort of representing, a shadow. When two things like my two hands get close together, there's a black line between them. That's a contact shadow. There's three kinds of shadows. That kind of shadow, the cast shadow that my hand is making beneath it on the here, which you can't really see very well, but in here, that's the cast shadow. And then there's this sort of shadow on the side of my hand. That's the form shadow. And so the one on the side of my hand there, that's really the most important one for like making things look dimensional. But it can always look weird when you sort of go in with the black, and that's sort of why I like cartoons. You don't have to think about the shadows so much, shadows are very important. So that's really very sort of key, I think. That that's one of the key differences. Like a sort of funny cartoon doesn't usually have a lot of shadows, and it probably shouldn't really be that well drawn. But a drawing that's trying to sort of, excite or scare you or something, that's sort of really about where the light is coming from and where it's going. And, to make something look dimensional, definitely needs a sort of lit side and a shadowy side. And then different objects, like if something's shiny, it has a sort of a harder texture than something that doesn't, or reflective. I'm sort of doing this as somewhat reflective, but also, it's really got to absorb the light. So I'm just going to keep letting it absorb the light until, well, it's probably going to lose all its form altogether. So, so I just have to sort of see. But it's supposed to be like a dark brick tower. But yeah, so then I'll probably, then I'll come in and probably add like highlights. It's sort of when it's really that black, it's sort of better to really kind of work on it, in reverse. Start with the black and then paint in the white. Because yes, if there's no reflection, then it's just a sort of lump. All right. Well, I'm gonna. Yeah, really, it's all gone. When the watercolor, as the watercolor dries, it reveals a bit more like texture and stuff. So I'm definitely going to be coming in and highlighting it, and I may even go and make it sort of darker again before I'm finished. But I'll leave it there for now.
So I'm always curious about this from artists. What do you find is the hardest thing to draw?
Bicycle.
A bicycle, really?
A bicycle is pretty hard. Make it somebody riding a bicycle, and now it's really hard. Make it like two people riding a bicycle past each other and kissing.
Now you're just making it way too difficult. You've done this to yourself, buddy.
It just depends. I mean, then there's artists that specialize in bicycles. I'm like, I love bicycles. I don't know that many. I don't know many artists that are like, oh, I love bicycles.
That's interesting. That's one that I wouldn't have expected. It makes sense to a degree, but like proportionally, you've got to make it look right. But in my head, I'm just like, but isn't it mostly just two circles that are connected by something? And you could kind of make that shape whatever you want. As long as it makes sense and looks like it'd be aerodynamic.
Yes, there's a sort of, I think it depends sort of how methodical you are. Yes, there's a sort of methodical way of drawing a bicycle. But honestly, that would be a case of like, I would find some bicycle reference and trace it. I think. I mean, mostly. I don't depend. Part of the reason I like working for Goodman Games is I don't get asked to draw bicycles.
Now someone's gonna make you draw a bicycle just out of spite.
Well, you can have bicycles in X-Crawl, I suppose.
What about Ghosty Squid says, but what about a tandem bicycle?
Yes, well,
Now
I don't know. A tandem bicycle. There's two people on the one bicycle. I don't know if it probably. I mean, if you're drawing one bicycle, you might as well draw a tandem bicycle. Probably not going to be that much harder.
Just make it. Just make it. Just take it to the Olympics. Just.
Yeah.
If you're gonna make me draw a bicycle, you're gonna get a tandem one now.
A tandem bicycle orgy. Sorry.
Oh jeez.
No, well, I don't know. We won't think about that.
The worst part about it is
it's harder though. People. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the worst part about it is I didn't even think about people. I thought about bicycles. Just a bunch of bicycles.
Well, people interacting, two people connecting. I mean, as I said, people kissing is actually, well, first of all, you practice it, you've got to find people kissing, and then they don't usually want you drawing them. Sorry.
We won't think about that.
Just you and me, darling, the artist in the corner. I don't mind the artist.
Don't worry about it. That's what it was like back in the day.
Yeah.
Like before cameras. Yeah. It was just a dude with a sketch pad.
It's me and my sketch pad, yes. Well, like in Titanic, I suppose. All right, well. All right, so there's a little sort of graveyard around that, and yeah, that's how. Well, I still think I'm probably going to go in and just all black it. I don't know. That's the sort of thing I don't really know, and you sort of make it up, and we'll see how it goes. But this is the other thing, is that if it doesn't work out, we artists have all sorts of ways of making it work out. In the old days, now you can use a computer. In the old days, you put another piece of the same paper on top, and you cut it out with your scalpel, and then you've got an exact patch. We were still doing things like that back when I first went into the workforce. We did have computers. I think I'm always on the computer side of things. Yeah, I had a computer class at school. I didn't really know it was a new thing. I didn't really knew, but I'd go down to the computer lab and do some computing.
It's amazing I got into broadcasting, because I used to be terrible with computers. It was the worst thing for me when I was a kid, because I grew up in the age where the internet wasn't new, but it was AOL and dial-up was the internet is what I think of the internet growing up. It was yeah. You were on AOL. There was no such thing as Google. There was no such thing.
Yes.
You logged into AOL to get on the internet.
Yeah. Yes. That was how it was for a while. Definitely. Yes. AOL. Yeah.
Thinking back on, I wish that I had, forced myself to pay more attention to what was called technology class in middle school, where they taught you rudimentary coding and other things, and how to use, how to program and create models for a laser cutter, and how to make, I remember they made us try to make aerodynamic cars that you'd put a CO2 canister in the back and send it down a track to see whose was faster. And I kind of wish I had paid more attention in that class, because I think I would have a better outlook on computers than I do now.
Well, now we've all got to use them. I don't know. Yeah. Coding. Oh, coding's a good way to go if you've got that kind of brain.
I don't have the brain for it. I've tried multiple different types of coding. I've tried Java, Python, C++. No, not C++. I did C#. And it's just, like, I know so many people who do coding for a living, and that's their job. They figure out how things function and make it work, and I'm like, I look at what they do for a living, and I'm like, you're writing in a completely different language, and they're like, yep. Like, I can barely speak the German that I learned.
Yes. Well, now AI is going to do everything, so...
Yeah, it's like now if I need to learn how to make a calculator in Java, I'll just make my computer make the calculator for me.
Yeah. Yes, well, it's very interesting where that's all going. I don't know, but you still, I think, to do anything interesting, you still need the human. I don't know. I mean, yes, because I don't. First of all, you haven't really got AI until you make an AI to be an artist that says, actually, no, I would rather be an accountant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you'll know.
I feel like
I don't think I'm any good as an artist. I think I need something more stable that I'm better suited for.
Yeah, right. It's one of those things that I feel like creativity is where where humanity is always going to prevail, in a sense, with technology, is because sure, you could make a computer learn to paint, but it's going to be soulless no matter what.
It doesn't have the desire to paint. It doesn't have the desire to do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very interesting. Well, there's a good horror short story that I read, like sci-fi thing, called what is it? The Beast Adjoins. The Beast Adjoins. Check it out. You can find it online on like Asimov. It's sort of a take on Terminator machines, but it's kind of very horrific of what they've done to humanity.
Mm-hmm. I think that might actually be in. I have a collection of Asimov robotics short stories from.
Well, it's not by him.
Oh, it's not.
It was recently published by like Asimov magazine or whatever.
Okay, yes. Gotcha. Okay, yes. I see what you mean.
It's a very modern take on all that sort of stuff.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
A bit Terminator-ish, if they've got sense, they'll steal it and use it for the next Terminator movie.
Yeah. If they don't go back to recreate the John Carter story all over again.
Yes, John Connor. Yes. As opposed to John Carter from Mars.
Yes, I said John Carter. I meant Connor. My brain likes to mix a bunch of things.
I watched that show, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. That's a tongue twister. The Sarah Connor Chronicles, when it was on. That was good, actually. With that was before she was on Game of Thrones. Yeah. Oh,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, she was pretty good. She was very grim. She was always very serious. But yeah, she was sort of Sarah Connor. And the other person who was in it, who played the Terminator, was Summer Glau from sorry, I'm trying to draw and remember movie trivia.
No
Serenity.
Oh, okay.
The Joss Whedon show, which was very good for its time. Don't know. I didn't really watch Buffy.
I didn't watch Buffy. I watched. I did watch Firefly. I don't think I ever got around.
Yeah, Firefly. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I ever got around to finishing it, but I watched at least half of the first season.
Well,
did it ever make it to a second season? It didn't.
No, that was what it was sort of slightly famous for getting cancelled.
Yeah.
But then the sort of fans got together on the internet and said, make a movie. And so he made the movie to sort of finish the story, actually, and he gave the story a proper ending, which was
okay. Yeah, I just never.
Cool. Yeah.
I don't think I watched. I'm pretty sure I didn't watch the movie, but I know I watched at least half of the first season. I really liked it, but I have the problem of I'll start a TV show and then completely forget it exists if I don't have someone consistently going, "Hey, watch this," or watching it with me.
Yeah, that seems to happen to me more and more frequently.
I get so distracted with other things. Like like recently for me, it's esports streams. There have been so many tournaments that are going on that I'm just like, I want to watch it. I want to watch the games, and then I turn around and go, oh yeah, I was watching like Lost or whatever show at the time. I'm like, all right, I should probably finish that.
Yeah. Oh well, I did like Lost, but I don't know. In the end, it's a bit annoying.
I
But
am in
yeah.
season 2 right now. I'm like in the thick of season 2 because mainly I have people telling me I should watch it. So I've been sitting down and watching it with Tyler every day. And well, almost every day, whenever he's not busy. But oh man, like, I understand why people think it's good. Like, but the characters are driving me nuts. All of the character drama I don't care about. I want the mystery. I want the island mystery, not the characters.
Well, it's still quite like a sort of old school show.
Yeah.
In that, it's sort of like there was the story of the week.
I think that's why I couldn't watch it when it was new. Because, like, it came out when I was in, holy crap, middle school?
Yeah,
so, like,
and you still had to watch it.
Yeah, that was weekly. It wasn't, there was no streaming service like there is now, so, like, you had to watch it on TV. And I just found that I preferred watching cartoons over, and, like, even, like, what was the one show? There was a show that my dad and I used to watch all the time together that was, it was a drama, but it was not a character drama, and it just, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about Lost. It's like, I love the idea of the island, but it's like, as soon as they get into the nitty gritty about each character, it's just like, I don't care about like, I understand that that's a big part of being stuck on an island with strangers, and you're gonna have these drama moments, but I don't care about them. I don't care about the characters.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a problem.
It's like a soap opera. It's like, I don't want to watch a soap opera.
Well, it's also, they're also the characters that were sort of interesting of its time, and then, like, nowadays it's a different show. So I mean, all shows are that, it's like the show of its time, but you don't, it's not until time goes by that you really sort of start to maybe sort of understand more about what they were and what that was about, and it's like something like Star Trek, which, let's go back to that because it's so great, but there's all sorts of things we can problematic you can say, but also you can say, well, you have to look at it in its time, and this is what it's doing, and this is the context, and actually, they're really pushing the boat out there.
And that's what I can kind of appreciate, but I think I tainted myself. I wish I had watched Lost before I watched Fringe, because because it's by the same person. It's J.J. Abrams for both of them, which is, I find...
Well, that's good, actually, because I like Fringe less after having, like, I did watch all of Fringe, but actually, it's interesting to hear that if you watch Fringe first, you might like it more, and actually that makes sense.
Because I remember I watched all the way through Fringe, because I never finished the series. It got canceled once, maybe twice, before its final season, and the final season I did not enjoy the final season because it had the same problems that I'm having with Lost, where it turned into more of a character drama than a story, and it that kind of bothered me, because I've realized that as I've gotten older, I'm more interested in interesting stories, not people stories. Like, I'm interested in setting, not story, not people, and at least as far as TV shows and stuff are concerned. And it's one of those things that I remember the last season of Fringe I didn't like, and it's for the same reasons I don't like what I'm seeing in Lost so far. And what I loved about Fringe was its weirdness.
It was delightfully weird, and he was a really good mad professor, and and she was great. It was like a great cast. It did get a bit confused at the end, but then also I just sort of kind of wasn't really paying enough attention. I was a bit like, well, actually, I wonder if I watched it all through and really paid attention, this would be better. And it's just the fact that I'm not quite sure what's going on.
Well, the problem that I had, because I binge watched through the whole thing. I did not watch another TV show while I was watching Fringe, so it was on a streaming service, and I just binged through the whole thing. And the issue that I had with Lost, and I see it from a production side of things, is I feel like there were maybe one or two things. I think during the year that the final season of Lost was happening, I think either the year prior or during that year, there was a writer's strike. So
there was that in the middle of it, yes.
Yeah, so there was that. And then it also felt like because they knew this was the very last season, they weren't going to get renewed. You know, it was basically done. Like, they had already gotten canceled before or put on hold because of the strike or whatever it was that caused them to slow down between seasons 5 and 6. But it's like, I remember going through and watching season 6, and there were so many things in the story that were just rush jobs. There were plot holes that were left open that were from other seasons that they were trying to tie in, but they still left it open at the end. And there were just all of these weird, like, you could just tell production value was dropping. And I'm just like, I don't, like, this story still doesn't make any sense. It's like, you've told it to me. I watched the whole thing and paid attention, but I could not tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So I don't think even if you paid attention, you would glean anything extra, Chuck.
Okay. Well, you know, it's difficult. Like, writers come and go, don't they? Shows like, oh, you create a good show, and then they say, oh, come and write on this show, we'll pay you more money. So off they go, and then some other writers, they're like, oh, we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. It's a little bit of that, but I really do feel like they were rushed into, there's no other season, so we have to fit 2 seasons worth of information and
yeah,
drama.
it felt like that. They were like really trying to, you know, get somewhere with things, and I was like, wait, whoa. All right. Well, it wasn't a bad show though. It was, you know, it's definitely a show's go. I don't know. Yeah, it's funny. Like any old TV show. Yeah, you look at it in different ways, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, taking a step back, like, I don't mind Lost in its time period. Like, looking at, you know, it came out in 2004, 2005, and be like, okay, yeah, I could see for the time that it's something new and it's something different. But it's just, it hinges so much on what people want in TV shows that I tend to not want, you know? It's the reason why I didn't like The Walking Dead. Like, special effects were great.
I watched all of The Walking Dead, and I don't know, yeah, I've gone in and out with it. I've heard that it's good, I didn't watch it. It annoyed me at the ending, because it said, oh, we're not ending, we're just we're sort of bifurcating into a bunch of shows that you don't really want to watch. That's
what I've heard, and I've been told by different people that it's like, oh, you should at least watch the first season. And I said, okay, I'll try that. And then I as a southerner, the first few episodes annoyed me, because you're in Georgia. Yeah. Anyone's going to have a gun. Why do you need to go to the police station? It's Georgia.
That's very interesting, yeah.
Like, as a person who grew up in the South, even if it was set in North Carolina, you would find a gun in almost anybody's house.
Well, yes, like, if I'm sort of playing like some sort of zombie preparation game, I was like, okay, where's my mate who's got the gun? I know where he lives. That's the first place I'm going to go. Right? He's not too far away.
No, exactly. That's the first
you know, the
thing
next place
I'm
going is probably Home Depot. But everyone's there. So then I thought, well, maybe the garden centre.
Yeah, the garden centre. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, yes. I like. Okay, if I was going to watch any Walking Dead, I thought the first season of Fear the Walking Dead, where it's in LA and it's like the zombie apocalypse starts in LA. That was a really good season. That out of all of it, because I watched a bit more, and that went downhill pretty quickly. But that first season in LA was a great season, and you know, it was a really good sort of zombies take over LA season. Yeah.
I will say though, I find looking at scenes and stuff from The Walking Dead, I love the special effects. They did a really good job, at least at first. I don't know what the later seasons bring, but at least at first, like, I thought they did a really good job with special effects and SFX makeup. Like, I thought they did a really good job with that.
Oh yeah, and they always try and top themselves. I mean, that's one of the things that keeps you watching, because they've done so much gross stuff, but you know, they would always seem to somehow find a way to top they've done before. So that's very creative, and I think they run out of it. I mean, there's only so much you can do at some point. I know he wants to keep it going, and he created to keep it going, and I admire him for creating it, Robert Wakeman, but Kirkman. So Yeah, but
The
yeah,
question is, do the fans want it to keep going?
yeah. I wish they'd given us. They sort of tease. There's all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, but
Yeah, because aren't they doing like 2 different spin-off shows or something? Is the
they
plan?
teased about 3 different spin-off shows with
Ugh.
like each of the sort of main cast, and one of them bringing back the main guy who had disappeared, but we knew he was coming back somewhere
Yeah.
because we never saw his body. And okay, I mean, you think bring him back for the end, just give it an end, and then if people want to
And
watch
then you're
more,
done.
then,
Like,
yeah.
send us off with a nice, it doesn't have to be poetic. You can make us uncomfortable with the way you end it and make us,
Yeah.
make everybody die and we'd still be happy. Just end it.
Yeah, end it, and it doesn't matter how you end it because you can always come and do another one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like you've already made it so other people can, you've done Fear of the Walking Dead, which isn't that like it has really nothing to do with the main cast?
Well, they've had the first season was nothing to do with them. Then the second, then at some point, some of the people came across, and that I suppose interesting. But already it was, well, it was good. But you don't need 2 of them. That's the point. You
Yeah.
only need one zombie show in your life. You don't
I think
need
also
4 Walking Dead shows.
I think also there's a part of it that it's like now the we've seen zombies. We're done with zombies, we've been
Yes.
oversaturated with the different kinds of zombie movies. Between I think like when Walking Dead was around, there was like I Am Legend, which came out, which is technically zombies, like in a sense. It was like
Yes. Oh yeah. There's plenty of zombies through the years. Night of the Comet. That's one of my favorite early zombie,
Yeah.
80s zombies.
Yeah, there's what is it? You've got Dawn of the Dead from way back when. Night
And
of
all
the Living
those,
Dead.
yes, of course, yes. Well, he really created that whole genre. I mean,
Yeah. So it's like we've kind of, I feel like during the Walking Dead time, we kind of saw our rise and fall of zombies. And it's like now we want something new.
yes. It was peak zombie.
Yep.
Yeah, can we have something new now? I don't know. There's been some good sci-fi. I like The Expanse a lot. That was great.
Oh yeah, I feel like sci-fi's on the rise between like Dune and I know Apple
Dune,
TV
yes.
has Foundation.
Oh yeah, I didn't watch those. I've read the Foundation books. I only just finished reading Chapter House Dune, which I hadn't got to. I'd always liked God Emperor of Dune, the 4th one. I never really read Heretics or Chapter House, so just recently I got through both of those. I did enjoy them a fair bit, but now I've realised then you have to go ahead and read the others.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but also, I don't think they're going to be making a movie of it, these ones anytime soon.
Yeah, they're just now doing like part 2 of the first book because there's no way you can really make I think they've tried and failed, kind of like Independence Day. Where they tried to make a movie that was based on the first book and condense it down to only one movie.
Yeah, well, there's the David Lynch one, which is, improved if you watch the Alan Smithy version, where it's like, it's got a whole bunch of extra stuff added in that David Lynch didn't want there, but it does make it more comprehensible Dune movie.
Yeah.
I
kind of forgot that was David Lynch.
Yeah, people forget it's David Lynch, and he did a great job, and it holds up well. And they didn't throw it out in the new one. I thought there was still quite a lot of reference to it still. And that one grew out of, the Jodorowsky one. And you can see that movie about that, which is very interesting. And all those artists, then it comes back to the artists because he really got all the best artists, like all those heavy metal artists, like Mobius and Chris Foss, who did spaceships. Oh, in the 70s, he had the best spaceships. So yeah, but the new one was pretty great, actually, wasn't it? So, yeah, it was good. But yeah, the books get more and more weird.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're like, oh, this is too much weirdness.
Yeah, that's what I've told. What I think my brother, because my brother's a big fan of Dune, and when I started reading the first book, I think he told me I could stop at the 3rd one. He's like, don't bother going past 3.
Oh no, I think you have to go God Emperor. God Emperor is great. I would love to see God Emperor of Dune with Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. I think come back again as Duncan Idaho. That's the movie I will be waiting for.
Yeah.
There's something so mad about God Emperor of Dune. There's nothing as crazy as that.
All right, I'll try to read it.
Oh yeah, you should. Like, yeah, the trouble is he doesn't really like the thing about reading Chapter House Dune and Heretics of Dune. Like even in Chapter House, which is the sixth one, I'm finally learning what the Bene Gesserit are actually about. And things. There are a lot of things there's quite a lot of things in that one that I'm like, oh, okay, I sort of knew it because I've sort of seen the movies. I guess they sort of put those things in, but they're not really explained in the book, and not until you're getting there. And there's still things that are unexplained.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know. But I know some very smart people that like it, including my brother-in-law. He's a big fan, my sister's husband, of Dune, and yes. So and those people that love it, they love it, and he's read all the prequels and sequels.
Yeah.
He likes them all.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating world. Is really where I'm at. I still haven't finished reading the book because much like my TV shows, I tend to cheat on all of my books. So I'm in the process of reading like 3 different books all at the same time.
Yes, I know that feeling. Yes.
Amazingly, I don't forget what I've read, but at the same time, I don't know why I can't just sit down and read only one. But
well, we used to all be looking at TV in this sort of episodic way for as long as that lasted. I don't know. Yeah, I think we can enjoy stories in an episodic way. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, I think I read like 3-4 chapters at a time, and then I'll put the book down and I'll pick up a different one. It also depends on where the book is sitting in my house. It's like, is the book in my office? Okay, I'm going to read it while my video is rendering. If the book is downstairs, okay, I'll read it when I go get breakfast.
Yeah, or the game, like your role-playing game, playing Dungeon Crawl Classics. When we role-play, we don't get very far.
No. No. Not at all. My group that I play D&D with on Thursdays, I think we've been playing for 3 years, and between 2 different parties, because our first party was TPK'd after a year, between 2 different parties, we still have not finished the campaign.
Yeah.
Granted, it's a big campaign, but if we had just gone straight through the main story, I think we probably could have finished it by now. But that's not how we gamers work.
No, and that's fine. Yes. As a referee, you have to sort of you have to let the players. If you're trying to make them go through.
It's like wrangling a barrel of monkeys,
And the more they sense you're trying to make them do something. Although actually, my current group of players are so manipulable; they're so easy. I say, "Go get on that ship," and they go get on it, and I'm like,
yeah. I've got basically 2 different groups that I DM for, and one of them is very skeptical of everything that I do, so it is impossible. Even if I wanted to railroad them, I can't.
Yeah.
And
I've had a really skeptical group.
The other group just takes everything that I throw at them, and granted, they still ask questions, but they just do anything. Like, if I tell them go in this haunted house, they go in the haunted house. My other group, I made them go in the same haunted house because I'm trying to play test the area to see if it works or not with different people, and they went into the haunted house, and they told me, so I have NPCs that take them to the haunted house. They're supposed to disappear when they investigate rooms. Well, they blasted down a locked door way earlier than I expected. Like, you can find the key if you try, but they just decided to go straight for the locked door because they're like, okay, that means treasure. So they go straight for the locked door, and I'm like, they start telling me they want the NPCs to follow them because the NPCs took us there, so why don't they? And I'm like, I don't have anything written for these NPCs. They're not supposed to be here anymore. You were supposed to go in a room and they disappear. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this.
Well, yeah, NPCs are a problem, and they do require you to, use your skills as a referee. like your acting skills,
Yeah.
you know, and you have to like improvise this character, and sometimes they get very fascinated with NPCs.
Yeah.
And you know, some things like if you read like Dave Arneson modules, he just goes on into great depth about all these NPCs.
I love and hate it. You know, it's like I'm so happy you gave me so much information to work with for an NPC, but at the same time, I just kind of want to do. So, but on the other vein, like I was able to pull it back, and they went downstairs and found a boy. Also, thank you, Dice Station Zebra, for the raid. But the NPCs ended up having a kerfuffle upstairs when they went down. Yeah, when they went down. Yeah, they went downstairs. They went downstairs into the basement, and as they were trying to call for the NPCs were saying, "Oh, we'll get there in a second." They were like in another room. They could hear a distant voice. They were in another room, and then I made it so they basically disappeared upstairs by a bunch of crashing sounds, like there was a fight, and so somebody went to investigate, and they're gone, and there's a blood trail upstairs, and I'm like, oh, thank God, I found a way to get them out, because I'm like, they're not supposed to be here, they don't exist.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, you have to let the dice decide. I think that's like Joseph Goodman's philosophy is, you know, roll the dice out in the open and let them determine. And it does. And the best things do tend to happen when they go off piste. But it's no good if they're like saying, well, you know, you say, I want you to go in the haunted house. They go, well, I want to go and find a rock 5 miles away and hide behind that until it's safe.
Yeah, I'm like, but it's...
You know, I'm like, oh, go into town and open up like a little shop or something. You know,
it's like,
you can do that. That's a different game. We can do that again.
Sure, that's not the game. That's not okay. It's
not
like
the game I prepared. But
yeah.
All right, you know,
it's like I've got pages of notes that are on this session, and none of them are that.
Yeah, no, well, I think that's the trouble is not having notes. That's what I discovered a little bit is that some of those old school modules where there's really little written, like you know, against the giants or something like that, you know, from those days. But actually, when you play them, suddenly all these sort of characters are just mentioned like it's this. But then they take on a personality depending on what the players do and what the dice rolls, and like these things sort of emerge. And you don't need to really necessarily explain it all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Goodman games are fantastic because you know, again, they're always very focused on an interesting situation. You know, what's like it said in that How to Write Adventure modules. You know, play your best game tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just. You know, whatever. But different people, and then you settle into it with your group. Like our group's been going for ages, and you know. But then people go away, and then we'll have a little change up. And well, all right. I mean, that's probably getting close. I mean, I can keep. I've got to. Well, all right. I'll just do these buildings. But I guess we're probably getting near the end of our time now, aren't we? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, that was really fun. And, you know, I would love to do it again in a couple of weeks, if that's the plan.
Yes, sir.
Great.
But we will say, I guess for now, we will say goodbye to our fans. Stay tuned for Joey Royale's Pizza Party coming up right after this. And in the meantime... be creative and stay in the zone and roll some dice, friends.
All right, thanks.